Nostalgia is a hell of a thing. They say it comes in cycles. Every 10 years or 20 years, everything old is new again. But all I know is it's the year of our Lord 2025, and we're still stuck in the 80s nostalgia hellscape. I say that like I'm not actively contributing to that problem right now, but even though it seems like it's forever ago, the 80s isn't the only decade from the past to dominate our cultural zeitgeist. Back in the 70s and, well, a little bit of the 1980s, the decade we all yearned for was the 1950s. Well, sort of. Kind of like how our nostalgia for the 80s is actually a melange of the late 80s and early 90s, the nostalgia craze for the 50s was really the late 50s and early 60s. You can see the mix in American Graffiti, Grease, and Hairspray. It's peak true blue Americana nostalgia bait. People to this day still have an affinity for it, at the very least the aesthetic, and thinking about it reminds me of the good old days when I was running around with my gang. You know, Potsy, Ralph Malph, the Fonz. No, they weren't all happy days. Like that time Pinky Tuscadero wrecked her motorcycle, or that night that I lost all my money to those card sharks and my dad, Tom Bosley, had to get it back. Look, I got off track there. One of the most important aspects of nostalgia is the aesthetic. You can be drawn visually to an era that you weren't even alive for just because something looks cool or visually appealing. Look, I understand that in our modern discourse that era is a little quote-unquote, hashtag problematic, insert your repressed housewife meme here, but I guarantee you 90% of the people who have an affinity for those halcyon days, especially people who were not alive in the late 50s, early 60s, genuinely just think the aesthetic looks cool. I mean, come on, there's a lot to appreciate even on a surface level in this era. It doesn't matter if it's ironically, post-ironically, unironically. There's the style, the fashion, the camp aspects. This was a time when milk came in bottles, girls knew how to tease, beehives were in, and Cadillacs had fins. That's right, it doesn't matter how long ago the music died, good old-fashioned American muscle cars are eternal. This is the 1986 Kenner M.A.S.K Hurricane with its driver, Hondo McLean, and I do believe this vehicle is one of the most iconic and well-remembered parts of the entire M.A.S.K franchise, all because it's a bright teal and flame deco 57 Chevy. And yes, as a Latino, I am legally required to call it a Chevy. Now, before we go cruising down Ventura Boulevard, let's take a look at our driver, Hondo McLean. Something kind of interesting about Hondo is the fact that he's the only Wave 1 driver outside of Matt Tracker and Miles Mayhem to get a direct update in Wave 2. Hondo's initial appearance was with the Firecracker, a bright safety orange pickup with a cute little motorcycle in tow. He came equipped with the Blaster Mask, a visor that looks like he's been hanging out with Scott Summers, and he also had a leather jacket and sweater combo that made him look like one of the Black Republicans from Key and Peele.
We're not a monolith. In fact, Black Republicans alone are an extremely diverse group of people.
In Wave 2, Hondo trades in his jacket and khakis for this intensely colored polygon suit that looks like it's straight out of the PS1. Yeah! It's a pretty cool outfit, and it looks more like body armor when compared to Wave 1, and really fits in with the later Wave stuff like the Racing Series and the really gauche Split Seconds. Now, instead of the Blaster Mask, which looked like a pair of Sweet Oakleys, Hondo now comes equipped with the Blaster 2 Blast Harder. Oddly enough, the Blaster 2 is the only mask accessory I've had real trouble with. Most of the masks and, well, masks are made of a much more flexible material, that way they can snug onto the figure. However, Blaster 2 is weirdly rigid and doesn't really fit on Hondo very well. It's also the only one that I've actually had break on me. I've had the European repaint of Hondo, and that Blaster Mask just crumbled like it was made of gold plastic. Alright, we might as well get rolling with the Hurricane. As previously mentioned, it's a bright, eye-catching 1957 Chevy Bel Air. Despite the fact the majority of the videos on my channel are either Transformers or M.A.S.K related, which are both very car-heavy franchises, I know jack and shit about cars, and Jack left town. But what I do know is if somebody as ignorant as I am about cars can look at it and recognize it, then that is one damn iconic car, alright? The 57 Chevy is as American as it gets. It's fireworks apple pie Ken burns his baseball, it's gonna give you the stars and stripes all night. But the Hurricane's only gonna go down Dead Man's Curve if it means bringing the fight to Venom, so it converts into a mobile command post, whatever that is. Oh my god, did Cheech and Chong invent M.A.S.K?
Alright, that's better, man.
The chassis drops out from the bottom and reveals another set of wheels for all-terrain movement. The top of the car spins around and reveals a howitzer, and a turret pops out of the top. There's also some other small details, like the headlights pop out, a nice little Tron-style sticker is revealed on the front that I think is some sort of porthole, and then the back has a teeny tiny little buzzsaw. All told, it's a bit of a Warboy mobile. Looks a little more at home with Mad Max rather than M.A.S.K. This is also another M.A.S.K vehicle that looks better when you have more minifigures manning it, especially considering it has that turret up top. In fact, the overall form, function, and play pattern of the Hurricane feel very parallel to Venom's Jackhammer. For me, this raises the question, was the Hurricane originally intended for a Wave 1 release? Now, other vintage toy YouTubers have prattled on about this subject to no end, and you know what? I'm going to do the same. I'm just going to add my voice to that malaise. It's a little known fact, but if you want to talk about vintage toys online, you actually have to go through YouTube's Department of Redundancy department. Anyway, Hondo and the Hurricane do indeed have some oddities surrounding them, and you can really see that prominently in the DiC animated series. Now, before you start writing those comments, know that I still haven't watched a single episode of the DiC animated series. I'm keeping it like 7-Up, baby. Never had it, never will. However, I do know through cultural osmosis and watching that awesome intro that not only does Hondo show up, but he shows up in his Wave 1 getup with his Wave 2 mask. On top of that, the Hurricane also rolls in completely unannounced 1 year before it arrives on toy store shelves. Now, it's fairly well known that in the world of toy development, most toy lines have at least 2 to 3 years of product planned out well ahead of time before the initial launch. However, there's one extra factor that we have to account for here, and that's the fact that M.A.S.K was developed well before 1985. It had been in the Kenner development pipeline since 1980. I outlined this in a lot more detail in my Rhino retrospective. However, Kenner's M.A.S.K originally started out in 1980-1981 as A.T. Wheeler, a toy line about a trucker traveling across America with his best friend doing good deeds. This initial concept was inspired by the mid to late 70s trucker craze, just like C.B. McCall, Convoy, and a couple episodes of Chips. Considering that the Rhino was already planned out years before that 1985 wave, I suspect that the Hurricane and Hondo McLean were probably early concepts. There's just a very solid chance that the Hurricane, as well as other characters and vehicles, were already in the conceptual stages of M.A.S.K. It's just their placement in the actual toy line was a little nebulous. DiC probably just drafted up model sheets and character notes based off of what information Kenner provided them and did what they wanted to with the story. After all, it's a cartoon. That's the entire point. Another factor that people will bring up is that when the Hurricane debuted in the DiC animated series, it wasn't called that. It was called the Night Stalker. And if you ask the fine folks who incessantly bring up that fun fact why the toy was delayed a year and renamed, they'll tell you it's because of one of two reasons. Either A, Mattel knocked on Kenner's door and told them, hey, cut that shit out. Skeletor's cool horse is called Night Stalker, so you can't have it. Or B, it's Richard Ramirez's fault.
AC/DC. Are they mere musicians or accomplices as well? Some media reports have suggested that Richard Ramirez, the so-called Night Stalker, accused of murdering 15 people in California, was influenced by the AC/DC song Night Prowler.
I mean, you get your inspiration from something. In the case of that song, it's been completely taken out of context.
Oh boy, even though I'm a toy YouTuber, somehow true crime finds a way onto my channel. Not that I have a problem with that, but I'm gonna say this. I don't think it's either of those. I think there's a solid chance that Night Stalker was just a working development title for one of the toys, and it just got into Deke's notes. Night Stalker doesn't fit the Hurricane at all. I think there's a solid chance it was just a placeholder on the model sheet, nothing more. As for the delay, it could have been any number of things. They could have felt the Hurricane was very redundant since it was similar to the Jackhammer, or maybe they felt Wave 2 really needed a showstopper. Most of the time, these mysteries in the world of toy development actually have very mundane answers. Considering that the 57 Chevy has tons of scale model kits, die-cast replicas, and Hot Wheels cars, it makes perfect sense that Kenner would want to integrate a car this iconic into their vehicle combat toy line. Now, what I'm about to say doesn't have any proof behind it, doesn't have any weight behind it, it's pure conjecture, speculation, and a dash of magical thinking. I feel like whoever designed Hondo very intentionally picked his last name. It feels weirdly complimentary to have the driver of the nostalgic 1950s icon of a car share his last name with Don McLean, a singer-songwriter whose only track we care about, American Pie, is all about how the world changed after 1959 with the death of Buddy Holly, the Big Bopper, and Richie Valens. And no matter how much we look back on those nostalgic 1950s days, we still have to confront the changing world in front of us.
For those of you too young to remember the 60s, here's our stock montage.
Alright, I'm thinking way too hard about that and assigning meaning where there isn't any. That's a little bit more of like Hidehiko Araki created M.A.S.K, but you know what? It's interesting, adds a little extra spice to that 57 Chevy. As it stands, the Kenner M.A.S.K Hurricane is no doubt one of the most iconic vehicles in the entire franchise. I'd say it's at least number 4 in the top 5. Number 1, of course, being the Thunderhawk, 2 is the Condor, 3 is the Rhino, and 5, I don't know, Free Space. Tell me what your favorite M.A.S.K vehicle is in the comments below.